Bayern Munich, I mean, they're practically synonymous with just, like, complete football dominance, right?
Yeah.
You know, perennial powerhouse, Bundesliga royalty, European giants, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely.
But what happens when a team that's just so accustomed to winning has a year that they'd really rather just forget?
Right.
That's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay.
Bayern's 1991-92 season, statistically their worst in modern history.
Oh, wow.
We've got this article here,
Yeah.
and it is jam-packed with dramatic moments, surprising defeats, and even managerial chaos.
It's really fascinating to see how a club that has this legacy of just winning, how they handle a season of just utter failure.
Right.
It makes their stumbles all the more intriguing just because of that reputation that they carry.
Yeah, it's almost unimaginable.
Right.
Bayern Munich finishing mid-table, losing at teams that they would usually dominate, going through 3 managers in a single season. I mean, this article paints a picture of a team in complete disarray. So before we get into that disastrous season, though, let's kind of set the stage.
All right.
All right. Late 80s, early 90s, Bayern were on a roll, right?
They were.
Multiple Bundesliga titles, deep runs in European competitions, a squad just brimming with talent.
Yeah, no, they even reached the European Cup semifinals in the 1990-91 season,
Okay.
just narrowly missing out on the final.
You'd think that near miss would fuel their fire for the next season.
Right, you would think so.
Get them ready to go.
Right.
But perhaps that's where the seeds of their downfall were sown?
Right.
Maybe that close call might have bred overconfidence, like a sense of inevitability about their success.
Right.
And then there's that infamous quote from Stefan Effenberg, the star midfielder,
Yeah.
upon joining Bayern that summer.
Oh, yeah.
He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he chose Bayern because all the other clubs were too stupid to win the Bundesliga.
Wow.
Talk about a bold statement. I mean, that just seems like a recipe for disaster, almost like
Okay.
tempting fate, you know?
It definitely raises questions about the team's mentality going into the season.
Sure.
Was there a sense of complacency and arrogance that ultimately undermined their performance? This quote from Effenberg might offer a glimpse into those cracks that were already starting to appear.
So the season kicks off, and right away, there are warning signs.
Right.
Things aren't quite right.
Okay.
They draw against Werder Bremen, which, for Bayern, I mean, that felt like a loss.
Right.
Then they lose to newly promoted Hansa Rostock, a team that they should have easily handled. But the real shocker came in the DFB-Pokal, the German Cup.
Oh, the DFB-Pokal.
Yeah, so for those unfamiliar with the German football system, the DFB-Pokal is a knockout cup competition open to all clubs in the German football league system.
Kind of like the FA Cup in England.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Bayern, the giants of German football, are knocked out in the first round by FC Homburg, a second-tier team.
So a team from a lower division.
Yeah. And to add insult to injury, this humiliating defeat happens at their home ground in front of a sparse crowd.
Oh, man.
Imagine being a Bayern Munich player, used to packed stadiums and the roar of, adoring fans.
Yeah.
Suddenly losing to a lower division team in a practically empty stadium.
Right.
This wasn't just a loss. This was a blow to their ego.
Yeah, their pride.
It exposed their vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even like a lack of motivation.
Yeah, you could see that.
So the article describes this defeat as a premonition of the chaos to come.
Okay.
And they weren't wrong.
Wow.
But before we kind of delve into that downward spiral, let's talk about their European campaign, which started with a trip to Ireland to face Cork City in the UEFA Cup.
The UEFA Cup, for those not as familiar with European football, was a prestigious tournament
Okay.
for clubs that didn't qualify for the top-tier European Cup.
Okay.
So you'd think a powerhouse like Bayern would just easily brush aside a team like Cork City, a team made up of mostly part-timers, players who didn't play football professionally full-time.
Sounds like a David and Goliath matchup, with Bayern being the Goliath, of course.
Exactly.
But this is where the narrative takes a turn you wouldn't expect. So in the first leg,
Yeah.
Cork City held Bayern to a 1-1 draw.
Wow.
And get this, the opening goal for Cork City was scored by Dave Barry, a Gaelic football player.
Gaelic football.
Yeah.
That's a whole different sport.
It is.
What are the chances of a Gaelic football player scoring against Bayern Munich?
It's a testament to the unpredictable nature of football.
Right.
Even giants can be humbled by the most unlikely of opponents.
That's true.
Of course, Bayern managed to scrape through in the second leg.
Okay.
But it was far from convincing.
It's almost as if those early struggles were a sign of deeper issues within the team.
Sure.
Maybe a lack of focus or an underestimation of their opponents.
And the pressure was mounting.
Oh, yeah.
After all, this is Bayern Munich, a club expected to win,
Yeah.
not scrape by.
Not just eke out results.
It wasn't long before the manager, Jupp Heynckes, felt the heat.
Oh, no.
He was sacked.
Wow.
A decision the club later admitted was a mistake.
And it's a decision that looks even worse in hindsight, considering Heynckes went on to have incredible success later in his career.
Right.
He even led Bayern to a historic treble, winning the Bundesliga, the DFB-Pokal, and the Champions League,
Wow.
which is like the pinnacle of European club football, all in 2013.
So it makes you wonder what might have been if they'd given him more time back in 91, 92.
Definitely a big what-if moment in Bayern's history.
It is a real what if.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, was Heynckes really the problem, or was there something more fundamentally wrong with the team?
That's a good question, and it's one that we're going to explore further as we dig deeper into this season.
All right.
But first, we need to talk about the man who replaced Heynckes, Soren Lerby.
Lerby.
Yeah.
Wasn't he a Bayern legend as a player?
He was a fan favorite, known for his tenacity and his leadership on the pitch. But there was one problem. He had zero managerial experience.
So Bayern replaced a seasoned manager with someone who'd never managed a team before.
Yep.
Talk about a risky move.
It was a gamble, a sign of desperation, perhaps.
Right.
They were looking for a spark, someone to inject life into a team that seemed to be losing its way.
And did Lerby provide that spark? Let's find out in the next part of our deep dive into Bayern Munich's worst season.
All right, so we left off with Soren Lerby
Yeah.
taking the reins at Bayern Munich,
Right.
a club legend, but with no managerial experience.
Yeah.
It was a risky move.
Big time.
So what happened next?
Well, you probably already guessed it, but the gamble didn't pay off.
Oh,
In fact, Lerby's time as manager was short-lived.
okay.
And it was marked by, even more embarrassment, especially in the UEFA Cup.
Oh, so they didn't even make it past that first hurdle against Cork City.
Well, they did.
Oh, okay.
They beat Cork City in the second leg, but the next round, it was a disaster. They were up against Boldklub in 1903, a Danish team.
Okay, and on paper, Bayern should have just cruised through.
Yeah.
But instead, they were absolutely demolished.
How bad are we talking?
They lost 6-2.
Oh, my God.
It wasn't just a loss. It was a complete humiliation.
Yeah.
Bayern conceded 3 goals in just 7 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine the headlines? This was Bayern Munich, the team that was used to dominating their opponents,
Yeah.
not being just torn apart like that.
I bet that result sent shockwaves through German football.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What was the fallout like?
Well, not surprisingly, Lerby was sacked pretty soon after that.
Yeah.
It was clear he was not the answer to their problems.
Right.
And to be fair to Lerby, maybe no manager could have actually turned things around at that point.
So they sacked Heynck, then Lerby.
Yeah,
The season's a train wreck.
pretty much.
What did they do next?
Well, they brought in Eric Ribbeck,
Okay.
who's kind of a veteran manager. He had some Bundesliga experience, and his job was basically just stop the bleeding, to salvage what he could from this disastrous season.
Okay, so did he manage to turn things around?
Well, they avoided relegation, which for Bayern Munich, at that point,
Right.
that was almost a victory in itself.
Yeah, for sure.
But they ended up finishing 10th in the league.
Oh, wow.
More losses than wins, negative goal difference.
Really?
Yeah, which means they conceded more goals than they scored.
So for a club like Bayern that's accustomed to challenging for titles, I mean, that's a truly abysmal outcome.
Absolutely. For Bayern Munich, that is just unheard of.
Yeah.
And just to add insult to injury, on that final day of the Bundesliga season, you had 3 other teams all vying for the title,
Oh, wow.
while Bayern were just spectators.
You want me to get in the game?
Couldn't even get in the game. Just stuck there in mid-table mediocrity.
So managerial instability, that was clearly a factor.
Definitely.
But was that the only reason for Bayern's downfall?
Well, it was a major contributor, but there were other issues at play too, I think. Remember that quote from Effenberg
Yeah.
at the start of the season, where he basically boasted that Bayern was the only club smart enough to win the Bundesliga?
Yeah.
I think that arrogance might have been a sign of a much wider problem within the squad. Complacency.
So you're saying that Bayern's success might have actually worked against them?
Yeah, it's possible.
Like they got too comfortable, too confident in their own abilities?
Exactly.
Right.
After years of just winning and winning, maybe some of those players just lost that hunger.
Right.
That edge that made them so formidable.
Right.
Maybe they underestimated their opponents, thought they could just coast through on reputation alone.
Yeah, and that complacency combined with all the managerial turmoil,
Yeah.
I mean, that just created a perfect storm for those shocking defeats against teams like Homburg,
Yeah.
Cork City, Bold Club in 1903.
Exactly. And I think those defeats weren't just about tactics or individual errors. It really came down to mentality. Those smaller teams, the underdogs, they played with a hunger, a passion that Bayern seemed to be lacking.
Right, right.
They had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah.
For them, beating Bayern Munich, that was like a dream come true, a chance to make history.
I bet those teams were fired up,
Oh, yeah.
relishing the opportunity to just take down the Giants.
Absolutely.
And for Bayern, it must have been demoralizing.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly being outworked, outfought by teams they perceived as inferior.
Yeah, it chipped away at their confidence. It really just reinforced that sense of vulnerability that they were already feeling.
So it's a reminder that in football, no team is unbeatable.
Right.
And complacency can be your downfall, no matter how talented you are.
It doesn't matter how good you are on paper. If you don't show up mentally, you're going to lose.
So we've talked about the managerial chaos,
Right.
the potential for player complacency,
Yeah.
the rise of the underdogs.
Mm.
But is there anything else that might have contributed to this disastrous season?
Well, one element we haven't touched on yet is the kind of broader context of German football at the time.
Okay.
So remember, this was shortly after German reunification.
Right.
The country was going through this, immense social and political change.
Huge changes.
Huge changes, yeah. And I think it would be naive to think that that didn't have an impact on the sporting landscape as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So how did reunification affect the Bundesliga specifically?
Well, it led to the integration of East German clubs into the league.
Okay.
And that meant more competition, a shifting balance of power, and just new challenges for those established clubs like Bayern.
Right.
Teams they'd never faced before were suddenly vying for points, for a place in the top tier of German football.
Wow. So not only were they dealing with their own internal issues, but they're also navigating this whole changing landscape in German football.
Exactly. And perhaps Bayern were just slow to adapt.
Okay.
They were used to being the dominant force, the team everyone else measured themselves against.
Right.
But all of a sudden, the rules of the game had changed, and they just struggled to keep up.
It's like trying to maintain your balance while the ground is shifting beneath you.
Exactly.
No wonder they looked so out of sorts.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that the early 90s also saw the rise of several, really strong teams in the Bundesliga,
Okay.
like Werder Bremen and Kaiserslautern.
Right.
These teams were challenging Bayern's dominance, pushing them harder than they'd been pushed in years.
So it wasn't just that Bayern was declining, their rivals were also improving,
Exactly.
which made the competition even tougher.
Yeah, much tougher.
It seems like in this season, everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
It really did.
But even with all these factors, was there maybe just an element of just plain bad luck involved?
Absolutely. Sometimes, no matter how good you are, things just don't go your way.
Right.
Missed chances, injuries at crucial moments, controversial refereeing decisions. These are all part of football.
Yeah, for sure.
But for Bayern in 91-92, it seemed like they were hit with just an unusual amount of bad luck.
Yeah, just one thing after another.
Yeah, like a domino effect.
Right, one bad thing leads to another.
Exactly.
Before you know it, you're spiraling downward.
Spiraling downwards. And in that downward spiral, luck, or the lack thereof, I think that can play a significant role.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in a sport as meticulously planned and analyzed as football,
Right.
there's always an element of chance, this unpredictability that we just can't fully control.
So we've got managerial instability, potential player complacency, the rise of the underdogs, the changing landscape of German football, and even a dose of bad luck.
Right.
All these factors combined to create Bayern Munich's worst season.
Yeah, it all kind of culminated in this perfect storm.
It really did.
Yeah.
But they didn't stay down for long, did they?
No, they didn't.
What happened next? How did they manage to bounce back from this disastrous year?
Well, that's what's so fascinating about this whole story. their resilience,
Right.
their ability to learn from their mistakes
Right.
and to come back stronger.
Yeah.
But to really unravel that comeback,
Yeah.
we need to look at the psychological impact of this season,
Okay.
the toll it took on the players, the club as a whole.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We've analyzed the contextual factors,
Mhm.
but the mental side of the game, that's just as crucial.
Absolutely.
So what was the psychological impact of all this losing, especially for a team that was so used to winning? How did Bayern Munich cope with the pressure, the scrutiny, the just sheer embarrassment of it all?
That's a side of the story that often gets overlooked.
Right.
We see the scores, the league tables,
Right.
but we don't always see the emotional turmoil that those players are going through,
Right.
especially during a long period of failure.
Yeah. How can we even begin to understand what those players were going through?
Well,
Yeah.
I think one clue might lie in the frequency of the managerial changes.
Okay.
Remember, this wasn't just about tweaking tactics or formations.
Right.
This was a complete overhaul of the leadership structure of the team.
Yeah.
3 managers in a single season. That suggests like a sense of panic, a
Right.
desperate search for solutions.
You could almost feel the tension.
Yeah.
The desperation radiating from the club.
Absolutely. And that desperation, I think that must trickle down to the players.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine the uncertainty, the lack of direction,
Yeah.
the feeling that nothing you're doing is working.
All right.
Must have been incredibly demoralizing.
It's like being lost at sea.
Yeah.
With no compass.
No compass, no land in sight.
Yeah.
And in that kind of state of uncertainty, confidence just erodes. Doubt creeps in, and suddenly
Yeah.
the team that once seemed invincible starts to question its own abilities.
Yeah. The players who were once so confident in their roles, in their contributions to the team,
Yeah,
might start to second guess themselves.
absolutely.
That's scary to think about losing faith in yourself and your teammates, in the system that had brought you so much success.
In the system, yeah.
It's almost like an identity crisis.
It is. It really is.
Especially for a club like Bayern Munich with such a strong sense of tradition and expectation.
Yeah, and for a club like Bayern, that identity crisis must have been really, really acute.
Yeah.
The
weight of history,
Yeah,
the pressure to live up to the club's legacy, it must have been immense.
absolutely. So it wasn't just about those losses themselves.
Right.
It was about the psychological scars that those losses left behind.
Yeah.
And those scars, they can take time to heal.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's what makes their eventual comeback
Yeah.
all the more remarkable.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't let that disastrous season define them.
No.
They didn't succumb to the pressure, the self-doubt.
Yeah.
They found a way to rebuild, to rediscover their winning mentality.
He did. And that's a story we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive.
All right.
How did Bayern Munich overcome the trauma of their worst season and reestablish themselves as the dominant force in German football?
I can't wait to find out.
Stay tuned.
So we've spent the last 2 parts kind of dissecting, I guess you could say, all the factors that contributed to Bayern's just disastrous 1991-92 season.
Right.
The managerial carousel, that potential complacency within the squad, the rise of the underdogs, the shifting landscape of German football,
Yeah?
even a dash of bad luck. But as we all know, Bayern Munich didn't stay down for long, right?
No, not at all.
They bounced back, reclaimed their position at the pinnacle of German football. So how did they do it? How did they overcome the psychological trauma of that season and return to their winning ways?
Well, I think their resurgence really speaks to the club's inherent resilience.
Okay.
The refusal to just accept defeat as the final word.
Yeah.
They took that disastrous season as a wake-up call, a real stark reminder that success is never guaranteed,
Right.
They knew that they had to make changes both on and off the pitch.
So where did they even begin? What were the first steps on this road to redemption?
Well, the summer of '92 saw a significant overhaul of the squad.
Okay.
They brought in some key players, really, to bolster the team's strength and their experience.
Right.
It was a clear signal that they were serious about reclaiming their dominance.
And one of those key signings was none other than Lothar Matthäus.
Oh, yeah.
A Bayern legend and World Cup winner.
Exactly.
I mean, his return must have sent a wave of excitement through the fan base.
Oh, absolutely. Bringing Matthias back, that was a masterstroke.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a fantastic player.
Mm-hmm.
He was a born leader, someone who really embodied that winning mentality of the club.
Right.
His presence just injected like this immediate boost of quality and experience and a much-needed dose of confidence into that squad.
So it wasn't just about star power, though, right?
No, not at all.
They also brought in some other talented players that would go on to become pretty integral parts of their future success.
That's right. Players like Jorginho and Mehmet School joined the ranks, adding that kind of youth and dynamism to the mix.
So it was a carefully crafted blend
Exactly.
of experience and fresh talent.
Yeah, it was designed to revitalize the team.
Right.
And to kind of usher in a new era of success.
So they addressed the personnel issues, but what about the managerial side?
Right.
Did they finally find stability after the chaos of the previous season?
Well, Eric Ribbeck, who had kind of steadied the ship towards the end of that 91-92 season,
Right.
he stayed in charge for the start of the comeback campaign.
Okay.
However, his tenure was relatively short-lived.
Okay.
In 1994, a true icon of German football took the helm, Franz Beckenbauer.
Beckenbauer, der Kaiser himself.
That's right.
Talk about an inspiring figure to
Yeah.
lead the team back to glory. I mean, his appointment must have been a real game changer.
It was a turning point for the club, for sure.
Yeah.
Beckenbauer had this aura of authority about him,
Right.
just this deep understanding of the game, and most importantly, this profound connection to Bayern Munich's winning tradition. He knew what it took to succeed at the highest level,
Right.
and he instilled that belief in the players.
It sounds like the perfect combination.
Yeah.
Smart recruitment, a legendary manager at the helm,
Mm-hmm.
and this renewed sense of belief within the squad.
And we can't forget about that psychological impact of that disastrous season.
Right.
The players, they had something to prove,
Yeah.
not just to the fans, but to themselves as well.
Yeah.
They had tasted that humiliation, and they were determined to erase that memory.
Wow.
They channeled that frustration, that desire for redemption into this really powerful drive to succeed.
It's amazing how adversity can fuel such a strong desire
It is.
to just bounce back, prove the doubters wrong.
It really is.
And bounce back they did.
They did.
In the 1993-94 season, under Beckenbauer's leadership,
Yeah.
Bayern finished second in the Bundesliga.
Wow.
Just a single point behind the champions, Werder Bremen.
That's incredible.
They were back in the hunt for titles.
Yeah.
Their confidence was restored, their winning mentality rekindled.
Yeah, a close second-place finish after the absolute disaster of the previous year, that's remarkable.
It is.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about their character, their determination to overcome those setbacks.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, when it seems like all hope is lost,
Yeah.
the potential for greatness, it still exists.
That's true.
And Bayern Munich's comeback story is a testament to that.
Yeah.
To the human spirit's ability to persevere, to learn from those mistakes, and to emerge even stronger from that, crucible of failure.
So what are the ultimate takeaways from this deep dive into Bayern Munich's worst season and their subsequent comeback? What lessons can we, as fans, as observers of the beautiful game, glean from this roller coaster ride?
Well, I think it highlights the importance of strong leadership,
Yeah.
both on and off the field.
Okay.
The managerial instability of that 91-92 season clearly had a detrimental effect on the team. Whereas the arrival of figures like Matthias and Beckenbauer, that provided the guidance and the inspiration they needed to really rediscover their winning ways.
So it's a reminder that even the most talented individuals out there need the right direction, the right environment to thrive.
Absolutely. But it's not just about tactics and personnel, is it?
No.
I think there's a deeper lesson here about resilience,
Yeah.
about the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's about picking yourself up.
Right.
Dusting yourself off.
Yeah.
Coming back stronger, more determined than ever.
And that's a lesson that applies to, not just football,
Right.
but to life in general.
It does.
Yeah. We all face moments of doubt.
Yeah.
Times when we question our abilities, when we just feel like giving up.
Right.
But Bayern Munich's story, I think, that reminds us that even after we hit rock bottom,
Yeah.
we can rise again, we can achieve greatness,
Absolutely.
and rewrite our own narratives.
Well said. So there you have it, the tale of Bayern Munich's worst season.
Yeah?
A season of chaos, humiliation, unexpected defeats.
Hmm.
But more importantly, it's a tale of resilience,
Exactly.
of a club that refused to be defined by their failures.
Right.
They dug deep, rebuilt, and reclaimed their place among the elite of European football.
Yeah, it's a story that reminds us that even giants can stumble,
Right.
but it's how they get back up that really matters.
That's what makes sport and life itself so compelling.
Absolutely.
It's the journey, the ups and downs, the moments of triumph and despair that shape us, that define who we are.
For sure.
So the next time you face a setback, remember Bayern Munich's 1991-92 season.
Yeah.
Remember their resilience, their determination, their refusal to give up.
Right.
And let their story inspire you to overcome your own challenges and achieve your own version of greatness.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Bayern Munich's worst season.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration of the sporting world. But until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving for your own personal best